In January, Russia effectively turned the month into a logistics surge, flooding frontline units with fresh equipment and ammunition as factories worked at high tempo to restock its forces for another grinding year of war. Despite heavy battlefield losses and Western sanctions on its defense industry, the Kremlin is openly gearing up for a long conflict through 2026, using expanded production and new procurement plans to sustain operations against Ukraine. Russia's Defense Minister Andrei Belousov said that in January alone more than 10,000 individual weapon systems and pieces of military equipment were handed over to the army, reinforcing units across multiple fronts. Belousov also reported that roughly 2 million rounds of ammunition entered service with Russian troops during January, with overall 2026 plans calling for hundreds of thousands more items of equipment and tens of millions of munitions to follow. Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov said, the Russian army had received more than 10,000 weapons and around 2 million munitions in January 2026. More than 310,000 hardware items and about 21 million weapons are planned to be supplied to the troops this year. Russia's defense minister hailed state arms companies and supporting ministries for meeting tough production goals, stressing that tight interagency coordination had allowed them to ramp up weapon output despite sanctions and wartime strain. At the meeting, defense industry bosses gave updates on how far they had fulfilled major state contracts, while Andrei Belousov pressed them hard on delivery schedules, warning that missed deadlines directly affect frontline combat capability. Discussions centered on removing production bottlenecks, securing components, and keeping assembly lines running at full capacity so that weapons, vehicles, and ammunition can reach units at the front in a reliable, uninterrupted flow. This intensified arming push is unfolding as Russia's offensive in Ukraine nears its fifth year, with Moscow trying to offset battlefield attrition and harsh international sanctions by leaning even more heavily on its defense industrial complex. Even as Russian, Ukrainian, and US negotiators met in Abu Dhabi for trilateral talks on ending the war, both armies kept pressing offensive operations on the ground, underlining how diplomacy and intensified fighting are now unfolding in parallel. Kiev's forces answered continued Russian pressure with a coordinated strike into Russia's Bryansk region, firing HIMARS rockets alongside cruise missiles and swarms of drones to hit military-linked targets well behind the frontier. Moscow's defense ministry insisted its air defense network shot down the incoming Neptune missiles and at least 11 Ukrainian unmanned aircraft, presenting the raid as a failed terrorist attack that was fully neutralized before reaching key assets. On the 3rd of February, Ukrainian missiles struck a major infrastructure site in the Russian city of Belgorod, dealing serious damage to an energy-related facility that supports the region's power and heating systems near the border. The impact knocked out parts of Belgorod's power grid and triggered significant blackouts, forcing Russian emergency teams to move quickly with round-the-clock repairs to restore electricity and stabilize the city's battered energy network. In southern Ukraine, a Russian drone attack on Zaporizhzhia on the 3rd of February killed 2 18-year-olds and wounded at least 11 others, including several children, after unmanned aircraft slammed into high-rise buildings and nearby shops. President Volodymyr Zelensky said that in January alone Russia launched more than 6,000 assault drones and roughly 5,500 guided aerial bombs at Ukraine, a volume he warned is straining air defenses and relentlessly battering infrastructure nationwide. Analysts at Militani report that Russian aviation increased its guided bomb usage by about 26% in January compared with December 2025, signaling a deliberate escalation in the intensity of bombing runs along the front. With roughly 5,717 guided bombs dropped over that month, Russia hit its highest monthly tally since the full-scale invasion started, marking a new record that illustrates how heavily it now relies on airdropped munitions to try to break Ukrainian defenses.